Hey everyone, Simon Fisher here from Salty Dogs Fishing. One of the questions that we often get asked is how we work out where we're going to go fishing, especially for offshore species. What we're looking at in terms of the satellite charts and the images to work out where we should be targeting, make our trips the most efficient that they can and as successful as we can. So I thought we'd take a few minutes. We'll talk you through my process. I'm sure other people do it differently. I like to use RIP charts. It works for me. I think it's really good value. I think the information's pretty accurate. I know there's a lot of other companies out there that offer similar services. I'm not saying this is better than their services. I'm in no way sponsored by RIP charts or anything like that. It's just a chart that's easy to use and works for me. So with that, I thought we'd get into it and hopefully we'll cover some information that'll help you and address those questions that we keep getting. In terms of RIP charts, so generally I like to start just going through the sea temps. You'll notice here you've got different types. I always default to granule, which is a single image, whereas a lot of the other options are composite images. So see here, these images look pretty good. Most recent, there's a little bit of cloud cover down there. Great, and so I might actually just go back and just have a look at the previous image. Just for the point of this demonstration, because it'll make things a little bit easier. So what I like to do, obviously this is our sea surface temperatures. It's a single image. It's not a composite shot. It's not like a 3-day composite or a series of shots that are put together. So in my opinion, it gives a truer reflection of what's out there. I like to click over here first, and I like to go minimize my temperature range, which all we're really doing is making everything stand out and a little bit more pronounced. So you can see those edges poke out a little bit more, and you can see these edges become a bit sharper and easier to identify. So one of the really common questions that we get asked is you can see where I click around here and you've got the different colors of the different temperatures, which are changing down in this section. Now lat and long is changing. Is I hear people on the radio all the time, and I get asked every time we do a talk or we're down at the fishing club, it's we're going out for marlin, what temperature are you looking for? Or they're asking another boat what temperature that other boat has. There's no set temperature that marlin or tuna or everything live in. Is the common misconception that people are like, well, you need water over 22 degrees or whatever to catch a black marlin and things like that. We've caught striped marlin in 16-degree water. We've caught tuna in 28-degree water up the coast. What you're really looking for is using that water temp to tell you where you are in relation to the structure that's shown in these charts. And the temperature changes and the currents are structure. They're kind of the structure that you're looking for when you're out at sea. So if you're going to ask your mate what he's got, you better know what kind of temperature he had and kind of do a correlation between what your boat reads and his boat reads when you're at the boat ramp, because otherwise anything they tell you out at sea is not really going to tell you too much unless you're talking about changes. So that's just a common one that we get asked. So looking at this chart, you can tell that there's a couple of things going on. Number one, before even looking at the currents, you can tell you've got a big edge of warm water that's pushing down. We've got a bit of an eddy over here, which is forming. You've got this pocket of cold water here. The other thing I can kind of see with this chart, and if I go over here and really exacerbate these temperatures, you can see that I've got a real warm finger of water here. If I click on that, it goes up to 20.2. And you can also see that it looks kind of like it's starting to spiral around. So it's going to spiral a little bit there. Same as you can tell, we've got a bit of mixing and an eddy there. So there's a couple of things there that already look like they should be areas that I'm going to look at. So I like to start with temperature, and instantly I've got a couple areas where I'm kind of like, oh, I'm pretty interested in this area. I'm very interested in this area. It's quite a big break there. At the same time, this area further south kind of looks like there's an eddy coming back, and you can tell that. Now, the second thing I'd say about these charts is these charts aren't gospel. These charts are as accurate as they can be with the model, but they do rely on equations, formulas, and they're the company's best interpretation of the data that they have at that time. So seeing something on here doesn't make it gospel, doesn't make it true. It just provides you with a good area to target. So because of that, what I like to do is I like to check multiple kind of factors here. So the C temp's obviously one, the currents are another one I would check. The altimetry is another one I would look at. And then finally, I like to look at the true color. Now, true color chart is a satellite image, and I find it really helpful after, say, there's been a significant flood up the coast. If you're trying to target little black marlin inshore, or even your mackerel and other species, if you're a spear fisherman and if you do a lot of inshore fishing, some days you'll turn up and the water's green. Well, that true color chart will tell you that before you get out there, and it's really helpful. What I might do here is we might just do a bit of a layer, and we might put on our currents and have a look. And what I'm looking for here is I'm looking to see if those currents talk to everything else that we've got on the chart. So what I'm trying to do is I'm trying to look at those other factors like the altimetry, the chlorophyll, the true color, and I'm trying to find where the sea surface temp is aligned with the currents, often because they're the best guess estimates, these charts. You're taking a lot of information and it doesn't quite line up. So you can see, for example, this just shows a really strong current coming north to south down the coast. The length of the arrows is actually the strength of the current, and it shows a patch of softer water here. And you can see here that that eddy that we spoke about here is coming up with that cooler water. The same time down here where we've got our sharp temperature break, this looks quite nice because you've got an area of low current on the inside edge of an area of high current. Now that's something that I would look for because that's somewhere that's going to trap the bait. You've got a temperature change, so suddenly we've got kind of two factors lining up, which looks really nice. Now at the same time, looking up here, the currents that's shown here are probably not 100% accurate. Based on that sea surface temp, I think there's a bit of an eddy forming here, but that eddy's quite a small scale eddy, and it's just too small to pick up in terms of the formula that they're using to determine the currents. So look, you wouldn't take those currents as gospel. I know there's some questions there, but I'd definitely kind of look here and say, wow, those currents are pretty accurate. And I think overall the currents look pretty on point in that area. And as we go further south, you'll see that they kind of follow the line of the warmer water and that they're ducking out there. So you can see there that, well, they look pretty good and that there's pretty accurate. And there's number one, the main area that I'd want to target right now based off this chart is this area off JB here. This area just south, which looks like it's kind of just off Ulladulla there, which looks like a bit of an eddy forming on the temperature chart. But again, the currents don't correlate with that. And then if I was going to launch out of Sydney, I'd probably be looking somewhere on the inside edge or somewhere around here on this edge here where there's a temperature break. And I think the currents that are shown on this chart are wrong. Turning off currents just to keep the map a little bit cleaner. The other one that I like to look at is altimetry. The ideal zone that you're looking for with the altimetry is a zero line. So what you can see now is that area that I highlighted just south of JB that looks like a bit of an eddy forming. Well, there's a zero line running right through that, and that looks pretty good. At the same time, you've got a relatively neutral altimetry running through this top edge with the temperature break. So they're kind of both areas. We've got kind of 3 factors out of 3 for this area up here. And then we've got 2 out of 3 for this area down here. So I'm liking both of those. Up here, on the other hand, we've got an altimetry between 10 and 20. It doesn't mean there's not going to be fish there. It just means the conditions shown on the chart aren't ideal or aren't as perfect as we'd like. So as I said, this is just a tool that you use to kind of work out an area to target and to come up with an area so that you're not just driving around aimlessly, but give you somewhere to target, somewhere to start. Another thing I'd add there is that these are a best guess estimate, which I've said, but that means if you get out there and your sound is reading and the current's a different way to what the chart said, the temperature's completely off and the water's the wrong color, you need to kind of adapt and work it out. So one of the things that's really good for these charts is to look at the past few days and track and see how a water body's moving. And what you'll find that people are very quick to put reports on, and they'll say, we got the reports at these marks. And you'll be able to track those fish. Generally down here, they're coming down the coast, or with the bluefin, they're coming up the coast. You'll be able to track those fish and work out a pattern and work out and actually predict where they should be the following day when you're going to be out there, not based on the previous day's coordinates. We watch a lot of people who get the coordinates from the day before and they just race out to those coordinates, and you watch and they get there and they do some donuts for half an hour, and then they kind of sit there and they haven't got the bite that they thought they were going to get, and they leave that area entirely because obviously they've done a couple of passes and the fish weren't there. So whereas if they'd planned, they should really have gone 5 miles north of there or 5 miles east of there to where the same water was that the fish were held in the day before. And that would really increase your odds and your success rate on the water. Now, the last one I spoke about, and I'll go cover in detail, is the true colour chart. Now, I'll just try and find one that's not too cloud riddled. So what you can see, and I try not to zoom out too much with this, is you can see the slight variations in the water. And you can see that you've got some, when it comes up and loads, you've got a bit of dirtier water that's hugging the coast, which is pretty normal. That's probably from we had some rain late last week, so you can see you've got some. And then you've got your blue, cleaner water, which would be really noticeable when you're out there. Coincidentally, that cooler water and that colour change seems to line up really well with our temperature change just through here. So that makes me think that you've got a load of fresh water that's come out just because we've had some rain and things like that. And so that the fish are probably going to be on the outside edge of that area holding the salt. Now, that's all just my theory. Could be right, could be wrong. But that's kind of gives me a good indication to get out there, target that area and say, all right, so if I'm here, I really want to be fishing on that edge and there should be a noticeable colour change. And that's something else that I can look for. It actually looks like there was a bit of a cloud front heading up at this time. Pretty cool to see. Look, I hope that helped. In terms of most of these platforms have short videos they put out, but generally goes by experience. And the more you do it, the other thing is you don't need to be out on the water to get value from these charts. There's so many fishing reports that are put up on different social media platforms and through various websites and things like that. And just by reading those reports and then checking the charts, you should be able to kind of work out where those fish were caught or correlate kind of, well, they caught really good bluefin tuna yesterday and they caught them at this mark. It's like, well, what do the charts say? There's an altimetry of 2. There's a north to south current. There's a convergence zone with the current. We like when the current's converging in an area because it kind of traps and holds the bait there. And just kind of correlating and saying, oh, well, that's the same conditions as they caught the bluefin. So clearly those are good conditions to catch bluefin tuna in. Things like that really help and they'll really improve your success rate. The final thing I'd add is when you get to that area, stay there. If you get to the area and the area looks like exactly what you're hoping it looks like, spend the whole day there. You don't need to wander off and things like that. So many people I watch and, you see their track when they come in and they've just headed east till lunchtime and then they've headed west after lunchtime and they haven't really kind of covered the ground. Well, they've covered the ground, but they haven't really worked any areas specifically. If you're going to go and isolate an area that you want to fish, well, you may as well spend some time there. And by that, I mean, spend half a day, spend a full day. If the area's there and everything that tells you that the fish should be there is there, the fish just might be quiet. They might be coming through in packs. They might be sitting down deep till the tide change or something like that. So it's definitely worth just dedicating the time. And if that's the area that you've got confidence in, well, it doesn't make sense to leave an area that you're confident in the hope of running across something out of pot luck. Thanks, guys. Cheers.